Okay, guys, I've had my resin warming up for a while. Now what I'm fixing to tell you about the resin is, I'm going to set you down. Get you ready to watch me fiberglass that panel, as y'all have seen a million times before. Reason for heating up that resin is, here's the deal, guys. Let me turn this radio down. Okay. The reason for heating that resin up is, here's what happens when it's cold outside. Everybody wants to take the MEKP hardener, whatever you want to call it, and you just want to add more MEKP. What you don't realize is how strong that MEKP really is. And anything you add to resin, it doesn't matter what you add to resin, it makes no difference. It's going to make that resin weak. To a certain degree, it's going to make it weak. You can't have resin dry without adding MEKP, but it still makes it weak. So you don't want to load it up with MEKP or hardener, whichever. Okay. As you can tell, whenever I'm brushing that, I'm not really brushing it. I'm just kind of putting it on there. I'm not trying to force that cloth in there. I'm losing my train of thought. On your MEKP hardener, the less of it you can use and make the resin harden is the best way to go. Way best way to go. So, here's the deal. I mixed up 8 ounces of resin just now to do this. And I never mix more than 2% of hardener. I mean never more than 2%, ever. Wintertime, summertime, it doesn't make any difference. If you guys will follow that rule, only 2% on your hardener, you're going to realize that you ain't got to sit there and load this project up with fiberglass matting. Now, on a box, yes, a box has to be thicker, but these are just panels. And when you do your dashes and that kind of thing, you don't have to load those up with fiberglass resin like that if you got a strong resin in the beginning. Resin from a body shop is not strong resin. Resin is like milk. It's got a shelf life. You don't drink a 2-month-old gallon of milk. If you do, you're sick. Literally. So, resin has a shelf life. If you use resin that is too old, it's going to be brittle. It's going to break kind of easy. Resin just by itself will break easy anyway, but it's intensified when resin is old. Most resin sitting on a body shop shelf is old. Before you mix it, the best resin you can get really looks like candy. It looks just like candy paint. It can either be blue or it can have a pinkish color to it. But as resin gets old, it's going to become cloudy. You can still use that resin, but it's compromised. It's not what it once was. So, try not to use old resin. Everybody's guilty of doing it. I'm guilty of doing it. I've done it. The resin I'm using right now is kind of old. But the fresh resin, when you get fresh resin, you're going to know it. And it's going to be very sensitive to the MEKP. Extremely sensitive. So these idiots that are out there just, well, it's cold outside, let me put a couple of more squirts in. Man, that's just fucking stupid. And that's why you get the little hairline cracks and, all that kind of shit. I haven't had a panel crack in years from doing fiberglass. I got past that years and years ago. So you guys have sit right there, watched me fiberglass this. I didn't get nothing crazy. I didn't mash that resin into that panel just by taking that brush and fucking forcing it in there. I didn't do none of that. And there's another little misconception about resin as well. When you do layers, in a perfect world, the smartest way to do layers is while this panel is wet, you keep going. Letting this dry and then going back over it with a matting again, what that does, what it really does, is you get air pockets along in this whenever you lay that second layer over. The smartest thing that I could do right now, if I wanted this extra thick and I wanted it to weigh 500 pounds, then I would have more resin and I would start laying fiberglass strips in this. And then I would use those, I would layer it all up at one time. I can do several layers, but it all needs to be at one time, because you would take a roller and roll your fiberglass matting on this once you got done. This idea of letting it dry and then adding more resin, whatever, man. But that's what I've got right now. The other thing that I want to mention to y'all is this little tag right here. Let me see if I can get this in without touching this panel. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll do this. We'll put that right there. Damn it, I'm going to have to get steel. I hope that's clear to y'all, because it ain't clear to me. Anyway, what it says is that it's micro fleece. It's 100% polyester. There's two tricks in this. The first trick is 100% polyester. The other trick is micro fleece, not just fleece. Micro fleece is the ticket. That's the trick. As you can tell, this stuff is $13.99 a yard. It's more expensive than regular fleece. There's a reason for that. Go and find the micro fleece. The only way to understand the difference in this stuff is to go and find the micro fleece. Ask for it by name, micro fleece. Not just that regular shit everybody's using. That other stuff that everybody's using, here's what happens. You put your resin on that you put your fiberglass resin on that mat, and it loads up the material. You're loading up that fleece a whole lot more with resin than you would be if you were using micro fleece. Causes your panels to warp. Meaning that you guys that are doing these dashes, whenever you put those dashes in and you've got to kind of push on it on one side to get it to go, and sometimes you get scared because you're pushing on it so hard you're afraid it's going to crack. That's why you've loaded that resin up so hard in that fleece when you fleeced it and when you fiberglassed it that it actually warped your dash. That's not always a big deal. A lot of times you get away with it. Most of the times you can't. That's why come we don't mix cotton and polyester. Your resin is 100% polyester, always has been, always will be, and your fleece needs to be 100% polyester. Fleece is too thick, it loads up too hard, causes it to warp. Use the right stuff. You can load micro fleece too heavy and create the same problem. The longer the panel, the more the heat is going to grow, and you're going to have your problems. The other thing with using more MEKP, hardener, whatever you want to call it, you got the same problem. When it heats up too quick, what does heat do? Heat warps things, just like if you're welding a panel on a door. If you weld it in too long of a spot, what's going to happen? It's gonna warp, and you're going to warp that door. You've ruined it. You're going to have to replace it. Same thing in fiberglass. See y'all on the next one.